Imagine your planet is under siege. Trade routes blocked, the people starving, and the only thing standing between you and salvation is a room full of politicians who think speed means scheduling a meeting in 2 weeks. That's Naboo in The Phantom Menace. A peaceful world suddenly turned into a hostage situation, while the galaxy's most powerful governing body debates, like it's a school board meeting, about cafeteria lunch options. You'd think invasion would be high on their priority list. But apparently paperwork is the real war here. And the weirdest part is how calm everyone is about it. Queen Amidala walks in saying, "Hey, my planet's being invaded," and half the Senate looks like they're checking the galactic weather. The Trade Federation's sitting there smugly, like the kid who just stole your lunch, and then dared you to tell the teacher. Meanwhile, Chancellor Valorum's trying to keep order, but it's like herding rankers with a fly swatter by the time anyone's ready to act. The only thing that's actually moved forward is Palpatine's career. You can almost hear the collective sigh from Coruscant. Like, oh no, another Outer Rim problem. Guess we'll form a committee. Never mind that Naboo's invasion could set a precedent for every other system. Never mind that this is a blatant act of war. No, what we really need is to send someone to investigate. As if the Queen herself wasn't a reliable source. It's the kind of logic that makes you wonder if the Senate chambers have an actual oxygen shortage. But that's what makes this scene so brilliant and so infuriating. It's not flashy, there's no lightsaber duel. It's just the cold, crushing realization that the Republic's strength is a mile wide and an inch deep. And Palpatine knows it. He's sitting there watching the cracks form, not fixing them, not warning anyone, just smiling because he knows exactly how to make them wider. It's the kind of political power play that would make even the Hutts take notes. The real punch is that while the Senate dithers, Naboo's fate is decided somewhere else entirely. Not in a courtroom, not in a vote, but on the ground. By people who don't have the luxury of waiting for permission. That's the contrast that drives the entire prequel trilogy. The difference between those who talk about change and those who actually make it happen. Even if that means riding a giant swamp creature into battle. In this video, we're breaking down how the Phantom Menace exposed the Republic Senate for what it really was. A bloated, self-absorbed, easily manipulated machine that could ignore a planetary invasion without blinking. We'll dig into the political games, the power grabs, and why Naboo's crisis was the clearest warning sign that the Republic was already rotting from the inside. Long before the Clone Wars ever began. The Phantom Menace opens with a problem so big, it should have rattled the Republic to its core. An entire planet Naboo's under blockade by a powerful trade guild with its own fleet, armed forces, and the audacity to invade. And yet, when this crisis reaches the Senate floor, it's treated like someone misfiled shipping paperwork. You expect urgency, decisive leadership, maybe even a fleet rushing to intervene. Instead, what we get is a masterclass in political stalling. It's fascinating to watch how quickly the tone shifts when Queen Amidala brings her plea before the Senate. She's describing an ongoing invasion, people being detained, her planet's sovereignty under siege, and the Chancellor's response is to entertain procedural objections. Maz Amida doesn't call for emergency measures, he calls for a committee. That tells you everything about how the Republic's political machine actually operates. Even more intriguing is how the whole chamber seems detached from the gravity of the situation. Planets are represented in that rotunda by senators who should be advocating for justice. Yet most appear more invested in alliances and deals than in the lives being threatened. The Trade Federation's representative is literally sitting there while being accused of war crimes, and nobody blinks. It's like watching a courtroom drama where the defendant gets to object to every piece of evidence, and the judge just nods along. The way Palpatine maneuvers during this scene is also worth noting. He doesn't push for immediate aid to Naboo, he uses the gridlock to push Valorum out and position himself for greater power. It's a perfect example of how inaction can be as effective a weapon as any blaster. The people of Naboo aren't saved by Senate action, they're saved despite it. That's what makes the Phantom Menace so interesting on a political level. Beneath the lightsabers and padresses, it's quietly showing us a republic, so consumed by its own process that it's forgotten its purpose. The most maddening part of this whole situation is how predictable it is. The Senate has the power to mobilize fleets, sanction aggressors, and intervene in humanitarian crises. But when Naboo's invasion is on the table, they hide behind needing further investigation. As if the Queen's direct testimony and the Jedi Council's involvement aren't enough to warrant action. It's bureaucracy at its most tone-deaf. The saddest part of the Phantom Menace's Senate storyline is that the victims of this inaction are never really seen. We hear about Naboo's people suffering under the blockade, but the film never cuts to their daily reality. You have to imagine families hiding in basements, food supplies dwindling, entire cities silenced under droid patrols. And all the while, their elected representatives are arguing about procedure on Coruscant. This isn't just about political negligence, it's about human lives. When Amidala pleads for help, you can feel the weight of her responsibility for every citizen back home. But in that Senate chamber, her urgency is drowned out by the echo of formalities. That disconnect is what makes the Republic's failure so heartbreaking. And it's not like this is the only time we see this pattern. The Clone Wars would later show countless worlds abandoned or ignored until it was too late. Ryloth, Underon, and countless Outer Rim systems all experience the same cold calculation if it's politically inconvenient. It gets delayed and delayed, until it doesn't matter anymore. What's tragic is how the Republic's citizens must have internalized this. Generations growing up believing the Senate exists to protect them, only to learn that it protects its own stability first. That kind of disillusionment is slow, but it corrodes trust like acid. And once it's gone, it's almost impossible to rebuild. The sorrow here isn't just about Naboo. It's about the moment the Republic proved it wasn't the safeguard people thought it was. And that realization would echo throughout the galaxy long after the invasion ended. For all the Senate's flaws, the Phantom Menace uses this storyline to pull off something impressive. It shows us how fragile a galactic superpower can be. On paper, the Republic is the most advanced and unified political body in history. It spans thousands of worlds, commands enormous resources, and maintains peace through the Jedi Order. But peel back the surface, and you find a system that can be paralyzed by a single procedural motion. It's awe-inspiring in a way, but not for the right reasons. This isn't the awe you feel at a massive star destroyer, it's the awe of realizing how much can crumble because of complacency. The entire fate of Naboo hinges not on fleets or armies, but on whether a debate can be ended in time. And that vulnerability is staggering. Palpatine's manipulation in this environment is almost artful. He doesn't need to openly defy the system. He just uses its own weaknesses to get exactly what he wants. Watching him play the Senate is like watching a master sabacc player who always knows which card the other person is about to draw, and the rest of the chamber is too busy following protocol to realize they're being played. As bleak as it is, there's a sliver of hope buried in the Phantom Menace's depiction of the Senate. Because even though the institution fails, individuals still rise to meet the moment. Amidala doesn't wait for permission. She leaves Coruscant, returns to Naboo, and builds an alliance with the Gungans to take her planet back. That's leadership the Senate couldn't dream of matching. It shows that real change doesn't have to start with the system, it can start with the people who refuse to be bound by its limits. The Jedi to act independently when it becomes clear the Senate's response will be too slow. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan aren't waiting on committee reports, they're already on the ground, fighting to end the invasion. In a way, this moment foreshadows the rebellion decades later. Ordinary citizens, small alliances, and local leaders doing what the central government won't. It's the same spirit that turns a farm boy from Tatooine into a galactic hero, or a smuggler into a general. That drive to take matters into your own hands when the system lets you down. It's also a reminder that the Republic wasn't made up of bad people, just a flawed structure. Within it were countless senators, leaders, and citizens who genuinely believed in its ideals. The challenge was cutting through the noise of those who valued procedure over progress. So while the Senate's apathy is glaring, the Phantom Menace still leaves us with the idea that heroism can thrive even in the shadow of failure, and that's worth holding on to. But in the end, Naboo's salvation didn't come from the Senate, and that's where the tragedy lies. The Republic's most visible governing body had the chance to prove its worth, and instead, it proved its irrelevance. That one failure wasn't just a bad day in politics, it was a warning flare for the entire galaxy. The invasion of Naboo became a case study in how the Republic could be manipulated and stalled. Palpatine learned that if he controlled the conversation, he could control the outcome. And if the Senate could be swayed to inaction in the face of blatant aggression, then nothing was beyond his reach. This was the rot at the core of the Republic, hidden under layers of tradition, formality, and ceremonial grandeur. It looked impressive, but it couldn't move fast enough to protect its own members. And in a galaxy where threats can cross hyperspace in hours, that kind of delay is fatal. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider looking at my pinned comment and checking out the links for my Amazon storefront. It contains my favorite Legos, my gear in which I make videos, and comics that I read on a daily basis. I update it constantly, so please, take a moment and click on the link. On top of that, check out my second channel, Critical Analysis Hub Plus, and my third channel, Critical Analysis Hub XP. Just one click would go on a long way in supporting my channels and future in YouTube.